Hi friends. As I'm sure you've heard, Hollywood legend Sean Connery died real recently. And I was actually watching one of his films not too long ago and made some notes that I have things I wanted to talk about. And it may not be one of his most celebrated roles, and it's kind of a strange film to be pulling counseling topics from, but The Rock is one of my favorite classic 90s Michael Bay action movies. It's everything you'd expect from a film like that. Lots of over-the-top action, really improbable scenarios, and all the one-liners you could hope for. And I did notice some plot points that illustrate some truths about anger and conflict in relationships. So before we get started, as always, here's your spoiler warning. The Rock is about a conflict that happens when a retired Marine, Brigadier General Frank Hummel, played by Ed Harris, leads a team of rogue soldiers to take hostages on Alcatraz Island. Now, not only do they have hostages, but they also have rockets with a deadly nerve agent that they have threatened to fire into San Francisco. Now, why are they doing this? Well, see, General Hummel has been on all kinds of secret, dark missions where he's lost men, and those men's families have not been compensated as their due from the government because the bureaucrats are keeping their nose clean and they're just plain greedy. And so to get justice for these families, he's engaged in this last desperate act. And the team that's sent in to save the hostages and recover the rockets is led by a chemical weapons expert played by Nicolas Cage, and Sean Connery as the only man who's ever escaped from Alcatraz. Now, Frank Hummel, Ed Harris's character, right away we can see he embodies anger, he embodies rage. But it is for a good reason. And that's one of the first points, because anger is always about pain. And when that pain is unhealed, and in particularly unseen, and we feel like it can't be shared, it can become anger of the most potent kind. And Hummel is the most interesting character to me. See, he's made this threat and he's done this action in desperation, but it's really not in his character. When the rescue team first arrives, and you can see right away on Hummel's face the panic when he sees violence is imminent. He didn't want that. He never did. He really just hoped his threat would be serious enough that it would force the government to capitulate to his demands. And this illustrates something that happens when we let our anger run away with us in conflict. See, the difference here is that Hummel knows where his pain comes from. He's tried to deal with it. He's tested multiple, much more appropriate and safe avenues of rectifying the injustice. But when it comes to our own inner pain, most of us lack that clarity. We have wounds that are buried under years of believing that I just need to get over it, of building walls around old wounds that we can't figure out how to heal and don't want to feel. But that doesn't mean they aren't there. And when we're in conflict, particularly with people we love, if we haven't found a way to live with and care for that part of ourselves, it's unclear what we'll do. In the aftermath of a bad fight, something that's often said is, I didn't mean what I said, or I didn't mean what I did. And that's actually sometimes the truth, because like Hummel, we choose something that's not really in our nature, but because we have this pain that is so unfinished and unseen that we don't feel that it can be shared, one of the desperate acts we turn to is to say or do something that we know will be painful to the other person. It's actually a very misguided effort just to be seen. And this nuance in our motives matters, and it kind of doesn't. Later on in the movie, Hummel realizes he's not going to get what he wants, and he tells his men to stand down and shut off the rockets. He never intended to fire them. But then he realizes something he hadn't anticipated. The men he's taken on this mission do want to fire the rockets. They are not like him. And even though he doesn't have the kind of nature that's congruent with the threat he's made, because he embraced it, he's attracted to himself men who do. And when we embrace pettiness, meanness, passive-aggressiveness, in an effort to share a pain we haven't even dealt with ourselves, we invite things into the relationship we never intended. And in that moment, he realizes what he's done. Hummel's having what I call the why did I do that moment. It's this instant of terrible soberness that comes when we've allowed our fear, our pain, or our rage to take us across a line that we can't take back. And suddenly we're looking at a reality that's been changed in a way we don't want. It's such a terrible moment to have because you don't get credit for bluffing when the rockets are in the air. And that's why owning your story is so important. Because it means breaking out of our patterns of denying our pain, covering up, burying it, and going into those wounded places in ourselves. Not to heal them completely or make them vanish as if they never were, but to learn to build a relationship with them that we've chosen, and not one that's just reactive whenever somebody gets too close to part of us that we're denying is there. And I've seen in my own life and in the lives of many people who have done that kind of work, that even something as unpleasant as conflict in relationships can be transformed in unexpected ways. So those are my thoughts on The Rock. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.